Hi, ladies and germs. Okay, this is Dr. Rudibaugh. I'm going to go over a few things with you guys today. I've been getting a lot of questions from team members asking me, what is a peak? What is an exposure? What's the difference between a peak and an exposure? And sometimes, they can be confusing if clarity is not made. And I'm here to clarify the difference for you guys and help you understand. It's kind of they're a lot different, okay? And I want to also share with you about the uses of three-way calls and what the difference basically between a peak, an exposure, and a three-way call, and how each works. So I have my notes here right in front of me because I'm a professor, you guys, so I like having my notes right in front of me just to make sure I hit on every key point that I want you to understand. So what is a peak? What is a peak? So a peak is when you get someone interested in what you do in a way that they see value in it for themselves, in a way that they become interested in getting to interested in wanting more information about what you do, or not. So you can peak someone and they might not be interested in getting more information, and that's okay too, but that still is a peak. Okay, so whether the person is interested or not doesn't matter. Our job is to peak people, and peaking is always a peaking. Thinking about a peak is always framed in a question. It's always a question. So it's basically asking someone, hey, do you keep your business options open? Hey, are you open to making extra money? Hey, do you want to have multiple streams of income? Or hey, can I send you more information? I'd love to get your thoughts or opinion on something. That is a peak because it's framed in a question. Okay, and ultimately, however you lead in to the peaking question, it doesn't matter, right? But ultimately it ends up with a peaking question to assess their interest. Your goal is to assess their interest for you to sort. Yes, no, yes, no, right? It's for you to sort. So whether they answer yes or no to your peaking question, it counts as a peak. Okay, so our jobs are to peak them directly, with a peaking question. Not beat around the bush, not dilly-dally, and it's up to them whether they are interested or not interested. So always remember, we are sorting. So we're asking peaking questions and we're sorting people, yes or no, in or out, right? We want to take people off the list, scratching them off our list. So that's our goal. We are sorting. So here's the question. If you send quiz question, all right? So if you say, if you send hello messages to 25 people on Facebook, is that 25 peaks? Good question, right? So the answer is no. So that's not a peak. Sending hello messages to 25 people on Facebook, that's not a peak, at least not yet, okay? But certainly you're connecting with people. Certainly you're building a relationship with people. That's good. That's a good step that can lead into a peak very soon, okay? So if someone asks you, hey, so what do you do? And you say what you do, and it ends with a thud instead of a peaking question, that is not a peak, right? So a great example. If someone asks you what you do and you answer them with a thud and not frame it in a peaking question, that's not a peak, okay? So remember, here's a good follow-up to that. So let's say they ask you what you do, and that is not a peak yet, but that is an opportunity for you to peak them. That's your opportunity. We want to grab on that and take advantage of that question and ask them a peaking question. Answer them what you do, and then end it with a peaking question instead of a thud. Okay? So imagine. Here's what you want to imagine. You want to imagine just going about your day, asking 100 people if they keep their business options open, if they are open to making extra money, or want to have an extra stream of income. Asking 100 people, you're going to have a lot of new business activity happening if you're actually doing that. That will lead to a lot of interested prospects. That will lead to a lot of exposures and new team members. Okay, speaking about exposures, what is an exposure? It is when a prospect sees a full picture of what we are doing. Example, let's say someone asks you, hey, what do you do? And you respond and say, you go to teamfusionfamily.com and watch the intro video. If you keep your business options, that is. Okay? Do you keep your business options open? Yes? Okay, why don't you go to the teamfusionfamily.com and watch the intro video there? Now you've piqued them with that video, you see. You've piqued them, and that is not an exposure yet. You're piquing their interest with the intro video, let's say, on the teamfusionfamily.com. Okay? So it's not an exposure yet, but now guess what? They are piqued. Now they are interested. Now they want to know more, and our job is to move them to their first exposure. What is the first exposure? Well, let me tell you, first exposure is an online DFY webinar, like we have one going on today with Miss Jules Marquisio, Diamond in New England, right? So she's going to do an online webinar. You can ask your chain of solution for the link for the Zoom for that. Okay, that counts. That counts as an exposure. If your guest goes on to the online DFY webinar on Zoom today, that counts as an exposure. Okay. A PBR, a home meeting, a home party is an exposure, right? A home meeting, a PBR is an exposure. A home party is designed to really help you get customers, so not business partners. So a PBR, what I mean is a home meeting is designed as an exposure for them. They're exposed now. A DFY launch event on Tuesday, that is an exposure. That counts as an exposure. Okay, a regional training. That counts as an exposure. If you get your guests to sit with you through the regional training, inviting them, getting them their ticket, perhaps inviting them, they're interested, they want to sit through, that's an exposure. Okay, or watching the animated webinar in the app. Watching the animated webinar, the cartoon webinar in the app, that is an exposure. That counts as an exposure, okay? So those are the various ways that count as exposures. They are not peaks. So an online DFY webinar, a PBR, a DFY launch event, a regional training, or watching the animated webinar in the app, exposures. Boom. All right. So you guys, sometimes people ask me, hey, doctor, Rudibaugh, is a three-way call, is it an exposure? So the answer is no. So a three-way call is not an exposure. Here are I'm going to break down the various uses of a three-way call. How do we use the three-way call? What a three-way call does. So number one, a three-way call can be used to pique someone, okay? You can actually use the three-way call to pique someone. So a three-way call can count as a pique in this instance. So maybe you're not good at piquing yet, right? Maybe you're just, sharpening your skills. You're not good at piquing just yet. You can say to your friend, to your prospect, hey, I'm working on this project with a really super successful entrepreneur or a real successful guy, okay? And I can get you in contact with him so he can explain it. And now you've piqued their interest. Now you can put them on a three-way call, which the three-way call is the pique itself, all right? So then you would put them on a three-way call for the upline to pique them for you. And the upline would move them to their first exposure. So the upline does the work for you. They do the pique on the three-way call and they move them to their first exposure, which is an online DFY, a PBR, a DFY launch event, a regional training, or move them to the app, to the video, to the webinar, the animated webinar in the app. Okay, so a three-way call, here's another use for the three-way call. Second use, so the first use is to use the three-way call to pique someone. The second use for a three-way call, a three-way call can be used to close someone, right? So, because you've already piqued them, you've already piqued your prospect, they've already gone to their first exposure, they've already gone to their PBR, let's say, and now you are putting them over the phone with your edified upline, so they do the work for you. And now you can listen and learn how your upline handles their objections and how your upline closes them into the business for you. Cool? And then the third use, another use of a three-way call, is that a three-way call can literally be used as a bridge. As a bridge. What do I mean by that? So here's something that, let me tell you how it works. So let's say some people after their first exposure are not ready to get started yet with you in the business, and that's okay. And now this is when the three-way call becomes super, super useful. So now the three-way call can be used as a bridge. So they've gotten peak, they've gotten on their first exposure, but they're not ready yet. Now you use the three-way call as a bridge where your upline comes in, does the work for you. How? In this case, they are building value to move them to a second exposure. So let's say your guest hopped on the webinar that you peaked them today and they said, yes, I want to make extra money. I keep my business options open. They got on the webinar, or the online webinar with Miss Jules Marquisio tonight at 5 p.m. Pacific time, right? And now they got exposed. But they're not ready to join yet, right? They're not yet ready. So we put them on a three-way call with your upline, and your upline can bridge, yes, act as the three-way call works as a bridge for your upline now to move them to a live home meeting, to a PBR, to a regional, to whatever that is. So your upline will build the value to move them forward to the second exposure. Guys, there is no substitute for getting your people on the phone with your upline. There's absolutely no substitute for that. Okay, it is the fastest, easiest, and most duplicatable way to build your business, because anyone can do that. Anyone can put their people on the phone with their edified upline and let their upline do the work for them. So I'm sure you have been peaking a lot of people this week. All right, so go back and double check. Maybe some of those peaks you can't really count as peaks. They're not peaks quite yet. Right? So be honest with yourself, go over it and see which are actual real peaks, which were kind of leading into a peaking question, all right? And use that if they're not quite peaks yet, we can turn them into peaks, right? So remember, a conversation is not a peak. Reconnecting with someone is not a peak, not yet. It will, but not yet. And also remember, sending someone, for example, the Guile video, or sending them the Kyani car video. Is that an exposure? No, that is not an exposure, but guess what? That is a peak, right? Those videos can absolutely be used to peak people. Another one is the originalinfocall.com, another great way to peak people, okay? But it is not an exposure until they see a full DFY presentation, whether it's online, whether it's live, whether it's at in a hotel, in a formal meeting, or whether it's in your living room. They got to see a full, or the app, the webinar in the app. So they have to see a full DFY presentation or the animated webinar in the app. So a lot of people, a lot of people will be ready to join right after their first exposure. Expect people. Here's something that I've learned, okay? Expect people to join after their first exposure and manifest that. And that will happen. If you expect people to join, they will. Okay, don't self-sabotage yourself. So expect people to join after their first exposure, because they will. And just know that for your strategy, in case they are not ready, that's totally okay. But our strategy is not to convince them. If they're not ready, that's okay. But our strategy is not to convince them. Our strategy is to move them to the second exposure. And that is called the second look system. It's the second look system. You want to leverage that, okay? And bottom line, you guys, real peaks should lead to real exposures. Real exposures should lead to real conversions. And that means people joining your team, right? And three-way calls can be used throughout this process to create edification culture and duplication, and to put the heavy lifting onto your leader to get the results for you, for them to get the results for you while you are learning the language and sharpening your skills. So you guys, I'm done for today. That's the difference between peaks, exposures, and three-way calls. Hope you get a lot of value from this video, and I'll see you on another video very soon. Bye-bye.